get all about it. Okay, so we're taking a look at responsive design here. So first thing I'm going to do is define a site. There's one in here that we've been playing with, but this is not the one we're going to use. So we're going to go up here and manage sites, and we're going to create a new site, and we'll call it responsive 2. And I'm going to navigate to site folder. So far I've just collected some images into the site folder. Okay, and we'll save that. All right, and then done. And we'll worry about servers later on. And so we'll see that the only thing in this folder right now is a few images for us to work with. Okay, we said we were going to deal with mobile first. We're going to try to do mobile first. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new page. And this is an HTML page, and we're going to call this, for a title, we'll call it responsive. And create. And since this is going to be more or less a one-page site, we'll do internal CSS. If this was going to be a multi-page site, I'd do external CSS. I'm going to go ahead and save the file I just created so that everything works. Like all of my paths and everything don't wig out. So I'm saving this as index.html. All right, since we're doing this mobile first, I'm going to go ahead and shrink the window I'm working in to 480 pixels, which would be my breakpoint for a phone layout. And then that's just going to kind of visually try to keep me in line there, right? Okay. I don't know if this is lazy or not, but I'm gonna be a little bit lazy and use Emmet to try to create my page structure. So inside my body section, if you remember Emmet, I'm not real good at it, so I'll probably screw it up here. But if you remember Emmet, basically what you can do is put in tags with a shorthand notation, and then it'll fill out the HTML for you. So I know that my page is going to have a header section, and inside the header section, it's going to have an H1. And then I'm going to go up one level, back to header section, and I'm going to have a nav. And my nav has got some links in it, so I can do a UL and then down to an LI. And the LI I can say times 5, so it'll be 5 links. Actually, I can do all the way down to A for anchor, and then do. You know what? I'm just going to do it at the LI level, so because I don't remember the Emmet. So times 5. Okay, and then I'm going to go back up. Let's see. That brings me out of the LI to the UL. This brings me to the UL to the nav. Okay, and then I think I can do main. And then next to main, I've got the section that's got multi columns. For that, I guess we'll do article. Or no, we'll do section. And then we'll do article. That's where the images are showing. And then we'll do footer. All right. Cross your fingers and hope that this Emmet works. All right, so I create all these things. So I've got a header, H1. I've got nav. Into my nav, I've got a UL. Into my UL, I've got 5 LIs. Okay, and then that closes my nav. And here's the main section. Here's the section, the article section, and the footer section. Yay, so that all worked. I did forget one thing, of course, Murphy's Law. I forgot the wrapper. So we'll just code that in here. Div pound, ID equals wrapper. And then at the very end here, /div. All right, so there's my structure. Now if I go back to live view, I can start working with it. I don't see much of anything because there's no actual content populating anything. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to try to navigate for a while. But we'll get there. I think what I did previously, I'm just taking a peek at the end goal here, is I just grabbed a random color. Looks like a shade of blue. And that's going to be in my wrapper. So in my CSS designer, I'm going to tell it where I'm going to put my CSS. Since it's a single page site, I'll go ahead and just put it in the page as an internal CSS. And then for my first selector, I'm going to include one called wrapper. I'm sorry, pound wrapper. because it's an ID. Okay, and for my wrapper, at this scale, I'm not going to set a width because I want it to be the width of the window, the viewport window. And so I'm going to go to background and set a background color. And then I'm just going to grab something in a blue range. I like that well enough. So I'm going to use this. And what I'm actually going to do is right up in here, you can save swatches. So if I'm going to choose this blue color and I want to reuse it later, if I hit this plus button, it's going to save it in one of these swatches so I can use this later on. All right, so I'm going to hit enter, and now my wrapper is blue. It looks like my nav is blue, but that's just because the nav is the only thing of content in the whole page right now. All right. Okay, so there's the wrapper, and then next I'm going to use a, I'm going to add a header. Okay, now at this scale, the header is going to be probably shorter than the rest of the views, like the tablet view and the desktop view. Looks like I've used a lighter blue on it, so let's do two things. We'll give it a height. We'll set it to maybe 50 pixels. That might not be enough, but we'll start there. And then we'll also give it a background color. And the background color, if we click on this, we can see the swatch that I used before. So I'm going to grab that swatch, and then I'm going to use this slider to slide up to a lighter shade. Something that I can put text over and still be able to read the text. Okay, and if I like that, then I'll add it as a second swatch. Okay, and that's interesting. I would have thought that that would show on the page at this point, but I'm not seeing it. So apparently, I have to put some content in it. Just to select it well, I'm going to get right here inside the H1 and type in, here's a headline. Now if we go back to live view, nothing. That's really interesting. I don't know why this isn't refreshing. I'm going to save all. And I'm confused. I'm going to close it and reopen it, see if that makes any difference. And it does. Okay, so for whatever reason, Dreamweaver glitched on me there for a second. It didn't display. It didn't refresh the display. I'm not too terribly sure why. My header still doesn't appear. My height, I'm not sure if my height is being used or if it's just using the width of the actual H1, but my background color isn't showing. So let's go look at the code and see if we can figure out why. So here I have a header. Here's why. I hand-coded this div, and I left off the bracket. There it is. That's what's breaking everything. Now go back to live, and that makes a lot more sense. Okay, again, I want to stick to 480. All right. Okay, and then we can build the rest of our pieces. So let's build our nav. We'll add a selector for nav. Oh, my phone's freaking out. Don't know the number. All right, and for nav, we will set a width because, no, we're not going to set a width because this is our phone view. So it's going to be a vertical, basically it's going to be, this is what we're shooting for right here. All right, so we're not going to set a width. We will, however, set a height. Actually, it's the LIs that'll probably have a height. Let's set a background color. So we'll use the same background color from the swatch for our nav. And a couple things. I want to get rid of the bullets and I want to get rid of the padding. I do need some content here. So I'll go back to code real quick just because it's I need to either go to code view or design view to work with the text, and I just don't like design view very much. So I'm gonna go to code view just to put in some placeholder text here. So this is gonna be my home link. This is gonna be my page 2. and 3, 4, 5. All right. Okay, pop back to live view. All right, now that I've got this, we can go ahead and edit up a little bit here. So we'll add nav ul. And with nav ul, we can get rid of the padding, the indent that ULs always do. So we'll set the left padding here to 0 pixels. It shows as 0 pixels, but it's not true. It doesn't show the defaults. So a real 0 pixel got rid of the indent. All right. And then we'll add another selector, which is ULLI. Didn't show it to me. Let's try again. There you go, ULLI. And here with ULLI, I was just about to get rid of the list item bullet, but apparently it did it for me. I guess getting rid of padding was enough to get rid of that. Just to be sure, I'm going to go over to text, and if you scroll down enough, you'll see list style type, and I'm going to set that to none. Okay, just to be sure. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and center the text. So under T for text, we'll do text align center. Okay. Probably a good time to start choosing some fonts, not just for our navigation, but for our whole site. I want to do something sans serif. So I'm going to add a body tag. And just logically, I think the body tag should be at the top of the list here so far. And in the body tag, I'm going to choose a font family. And I'm fine to just choose like this, maybe this this Gotham one as a nice sans serif grouping. Okay, so now everything turns sans serif. Okay. All right, and then going back to this LI, I want to space out these buttons a little bit. So under layout, I'm going to add some margin to it. Just trying to think if I want top, bottom, sides. Let's just try setting a universal, not margin padding. Let's try setting a universal padding of about 10 pixels and see where that gets us. Yeah, so that spaces it out pretty good. And then we'll make the text bold, so font weight bold. And we'll put a bottom border on it so there's lines that differentiate between the different elements. So here under border, we'll select just bottom border, not all border, and we'll do a 1 pixel solid border. And that should show black by default unless we have a color set, and then it would default to that color. Okay. So far so good. What I haven't done, and I'm just kind of taking a shortcut, what I haven't done is I haven't actually set an A for anchor to make it a link. I haven't set the link states, hover and visited and all that stuff. I know you know how to do that, so I'm not going into it this time. Okay. One thing that's differing here from this site is you'll notice this has this blue outline. If you don't want the blue outline, don't worry about it. But if you do, all I did on that is I think I put some padding on the wrapper. So on the wrapper, we set, under layout, set this padding here. I think it's 10 pixels. Okay, then it's going to put a blue bar around everything. If you like it, great. You don't like it, there's no requirement to use it. The reason it's double thick up top, I believe, is that this H1 has a preset default margin. So I'm going to add a style, header H1, and set the top margin to a real 0 pixels, and then that controls that. Right. I can position the headline inside its box here using padding as long as I'm here. So we'll give it top padding of maybe 5 pixels just to bump it down a little. We'll use left padding of maybe 5 pixels to bump it in a little, and it just looks more comfortable in its location now. Okay. I'm also noticing, and this is minor, but I'm noticing that this space in between these two things looks a little wider than the sides do. So I'm guessing that maybe this UL right here has got some default top margin. So I'm going to set that to 0 pixels. Yep, and that closes it up. And then if I actually did want it there, then I'm going to take my nav and I'm going to set it to the amount of space that I want, which is 10, just to get more control over it. I'm not sure it came out very well, but I'll go with it. UL 0, did that take? There we go. So now I've got an equal amount of space. Okay, so far so good. Any questions or concerns? No? All right, then if we peek at our code, our next section to work with is main. So in this particular, in the mobile first style, main just flows right after in a vertical column. And so we need to get our content in there, but we also need to establish the box. So let's just create a main style. And we'll set its background to the same swatch. And then we need some content in here. So I want to grab main. I can't really see it yet. I'm going to pop over to code and throw something in it just to make it visible. So in code view, I can insert a heading. H1's too big, maybe H3. And then we can pop back to live. And now we can see main and its content. Okay. All right, so now that we can see its content, we need to put in an image at this point. And so with my H3 selected, I can insert image. And it'll ask me, where do I want to put the image? I want to put it after the headline. And what image? So I can go down in here now and select one of these, grab this one, say okay. And when it puts it in there, it is massive. All right, so we want to control this image a bit. First thing, it's trying to use its actual file size in resolution in the HTML, which is visible here in the property inspector. Now I want to control its size by CSS, not by HTML. So I'm going to get rid of these values. Okay, and that just means it won't show up in the HTML anymore. And then with CSS, we'll add in a selector for main space image. And then with this, trying to be responsive, we'll set the width of this to a percentage, and then maybe we'll set it to, I don't know, maybe 85% of its container. Right? That looks pretty good. If you want it a little bit larger, do what you want. Okay, and then its height should default to automatic. If ever the image squishes out of proportion, just set the second dimension to automatic, and it'll put it back into proportion. All right, and now I do want to center this in the space, so I'm going to set the margin on it to auto. I'm going to try. Okay, and it's not paying attention to me, which is interesting. So it must be seeing this image as an inline image. So I have two choices. I could either try to text align it, which feels weird because it's not really a text, or I can set the display to block, and then it'll pay attention to the margin auto. Also, because it's an image, I just really want to put a border on it. So I'm going to border all the way around, pixel, 1 pixel, solid. Okay, that's that. Okay, I want to tweak a couple of things. Again, this H3 has got some default top margin, which is creating the gap between this section and the nav section. So starting with main, I like to keep things in kind of relative order in my style sheet. So starting with main, I'm going to add in a tag for selector for main H3. And then now that I have main H3, I'm going to set the top margin to 0. It says 0, but it's a lie. So I'm going to set it to 0. I'm still seeing interesting spacing between these that I didn't expect. For main itself, not H3, but main, I'm going to set the top margin of the main box to 10 pixels. And I'm seeing that it's having no effect. So something in there is creating that gap. I'm not sure what it is. I want some gap. I just want it to be uniform. All right, I'm not going to freak out about it just because I don't want to take up your time doing things that are not responsive design. Going back to main though real quick, we'll throw in some padding, maybe 10 pixels of padding. So our content comes off the border a little bit. We can also make this H3 centered. We'll go text alignment centered. All right, so that's centered. All right, now underneath our image, so I'm highlighting the image, here we need some text, some paragraphs of text. So with the image selected, I'm going to go to insert and say insert paragraph after the image. Okay, and so it gives us some dummy text as a placeholder, and all I want to do is put in a whole lot more dummy text, right? This is kind of a silly thing, but let's do this real quick. I'm gonna go to dummy, I'll just Google it, dummy text generator. If you're not aware of this site, it's a handy thing when you're designing and you just need placeholder text. If you go to dummy text generator, it'll come up with dummy text for you. You've got all these choices, probably too many choices, but you can choose like the style of text that you want. Like if you do Kafka, it pretends to be written by Kafka, right? It's in the style of his writing, which is silly. It's nonsense text if you actually read it, but it looks like text, which is fun. You tell it how many words you want. So maybe we want 1,000 words. And then you can tell it how many paragraphs to break that into. Maybe 6 paragraphs. So now you've got equally, well, not quite equally, but you got paragraphs, most of which are equal except for the last one, and just some text to use, right? So let's try 7. All right. And so now that you have the text, you can copy and paste it. You can select all, copy it to clipboard, go back to Dreamweaver, and trying to get inside the paragraph tag here. I'm going to go over to design view since I'm working with text and highlight the existing placeholder text, paste in the Kafka text. Okay. And now I'm going to go back to live view. All right. And so there's my text, fill in the space there. Multiple paragraphs. It is smart enough to recognize that when you paste in paragraphs of text, it'll put in the paragraph markers where they belong. Okay, which is great. All right, so that represents the next section. I don't like how it breaks on the word Gregor. Let me get rid of that. But otherwise, the text is fine. Okay, we do have time for the next section, so let's do that. The next section is going to be the multi-column text. So I'm going to peek up here at code, and we said the next one's called section, right? So I'm going to go in here. I'm actually going to paste. So I'm going to reuse this dummy text, and this time it did not put in the paragraph marker. So I'm going to undo. I'm going to go back and do that in live view. But I want to put some text in there so I can see section. All right, so now here's section. Let's go ahead and add in a selector for section. And in the selector for section, we'll go ahead and use a background color again. And for section, we'll give it some top margin to separate it from the previous section. And I think in my example, there's actually a headline first. So we can click on this and insert a heading 3, and we'll nest it inside. And then for this piece of text, this is not actually a paragraph. It's just some floating text. So let's delete it in design view. And then back in live view, clicking on the headline, we can insert a paragraph after the headline, and it puts in some placeholder text in design view. I'm going to highlight that placeholder text, delete it, and then paste in my Kafka text, and I'm actually going to hit enter and do it again because I want a lot of text to work in at this point. And then I'm going to go back to live view, and basically here's all of that text. Lots of text. Okay. In mobile view, that's all we want it to do. In desktop and tablet view, we're going to put column count on it. Okay. While I'm here, I do want to be consistent with my padding. So for my section tag, I'm going to set the padding all the way around to 10 pixels. It ignored me. Let's try again. Okay. All right. And I think we're in good shape there. All right. Concerns? Everyone doing all right? So far, so good? Okay. The next thing then, if we look at code view, the next piece is going to be called article. So let's create a style selector for article. And inside article, I'm going to have to go to code view just to put some content in there so that I can grab it in live view. All right, so inside article, let's go ahead and give it style the same treatment with background color, the swatch, background top margin, 10 pixels, padding, 10 pixels all the way around, okay, and all that sort of thing. Okay, so here what we had was a headline with an image. Okay, so with article highlighted here, we'll insert a heading. We can do H3 again, that's fine. And we'll just nest it inside article. In this case, I'm going to take this and actually say something like this, in design view. Whenever you're working with text, go to design view. This is not the content, but this is content for a phone layout. Because the reason we're doing that is because one of the things that's going to change when we use media queries to go from phone layout to tablet layout to desktop layout is this content's going to change. So that's the whole idea there. Okay, and this word is misplaced. All right, go back to live view. Okay, and then with my H3 selected, we can go ahead and insert an image, and we will put it after the headline, and then we're going to use one of these images. In my example, I used this one at phone view, so that's fine. And once again, the images always come in way too big. We'll go ahead and kill the HTML from the property inspector right here because we're going to control this using CSS. So we're going to add a selector for article IMG, and we'll set the width. Now in this case, and this is kind of looks broken, but instead of setting it to a standard into a percentage, like 90%, we actually are going to choose a pixel size, and so let's make this maybe, I'm going to guess 300 pixels. Okay, and if we do that, we'll see that the image, oh, it's actually looking just fine. It's looking fine here because we've got our screen currently set to 480 pixels. So let's go a little bit larger. Let's set it to 400 pixels. Okay, and what I'm trying to do is get in the ballpark of where it becomes a challenge. So if we squish our screen a little bit, that image won't scale, right? And it's breaking out of the layout. I don't know how well you can tell in this view, but it's actually breaking the layout. Okay, and the reason that we're doing this, even though it's ugly, is that I wanted to show you overflow. Okay, so I'm going to take article and I'm going to give it a border. Article image. I'm going to give it a borders because I like images to have a border. And I'm going to take article image and center it by making it display. Oh, I want to leave it in line. All right, I'm not going to center it. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And what I want to do here is use overflow. And here's how you use overflow. It's not the element itself that you put overflow on. It's its container, right? So this image is inside article. So we actually have to go to article. And then on article, we can set the overflow. It's under layout, and the way that Dreamweaver does is it says overflow X or overflow Y, horizontal versus vertical overflow. What I like to do is just do overflow, and it doesn't actually give us that option here. So I'm going to go to more, and I'm just going to type it in. So overflow is here. And then I can choose from one of these options that are not showing up. There it goes. I can choose, still not showing up. So I can choose one of the options. So overflow auto, what overflow auto will do is it'll put a scroll bar on it if it needs a scroll bar. But other options include hidden. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll just cut it off where it hits the edge of its container. It just cuts it off. Okay, and so the result here will be that if my page width is wide enough, like 480, then the image fits inside its container. But if the page width gets too skinny, gotta love these scroll bars, then it cuts it off rather than letting it break out of its layout. That's the point. Okay, one last section, and we're good for the mobile view. All right, so the last section is called footer. So in the footer, let's go ahead and add a selector for footer. Okay, I need to throw some content in there so that I can grab it in live view. Just throwing something in it. So now we get to live view, and here's footer, and we'll give footer the same basic treatment with a background color, and then top margin, and then padding. Okay, just staying consistent with our layout elements. Okay. Now, inside the footer, there isn't a headline, but there is a paragraph. So we'll click on footer and then insert paragraph, and we'll nest it inside. And it gives us some dummy text to work with. Let's pop over to, I still have this open. I'm just going to grab a random paragraph from it. And in design view, we'll get rid of this text, and then this text will turn into this text. Okay, and then we'll go back to live view. Actually, wait, not yet. Nothing we need to do is use a phone number. I'm going to grab that phone number that I was using earlier, which is this. And so what we're doing here is pretending that this text said something about this phone number. I'll go back to code view, or I mean, sorry, design, live view. All right. So right now it just shows as a phone number, but what we want it to do is show it as a hyperlink where if you're on a phone, you can click on it and it'll dial the phone. So what we'll do is we'll highlight that phone number, and with the phone number highlighted, we can insert, I'm looking for it, where is it? Looking for hyperlink, here it is, insert hyperlink, and it'll ask us how we want to deal with that. And what we actually want to do is wrap it, but for whatever reason it didn't give us that option. So that's rude. So I guess we'll do it after, and then we'll have to edit it. Okay, so our text is going to be the phone number. Our link is going to be tell : phone number. Okay, no space between the colon and the content. And that's all we have to say. So we do that and we say OK. And then it shows it in there as a separate element. Fine. We'll just go to our code and make sure that these things go together. So we don't want to close our paragraph yet. Okay, and then we want to get rid of this text so that all we see is the link. All right, so there's the link. All right, so now if we were actually using a phone here, we could click on that link and it'll dial the phone. All right, I think that those are all the elements of the mobile view. Does anybody see anything that they want to tweak or change to mobile view? All right. All right, let's save all the changes.